The clinking of silverware against fine china, the low hum of conversation, the aroma of roasted lamb and expensive wine. It was the picture of a perfect, if somewhat formal, family dinner. We were at my in-laws' house, a large, imposing property filled with antique furniture and an air of old-money respectability. My husband, Mark, sat beside me, his hand briefly resting on my knee under the table. Across from us sat his parents, Robert and Eleanor Vance. A couple of Mark's aunts and uncles were also present, making it a larger gathering than usual. On the surface, everything was pleasant, but beneath the veneer of polite conversation and strained smiles, there was a constant simmering tension, a tension that always seemed to emanate from Eleanor, my mother-in-law. She was a woman of impeccable taste and biting wit, capable of delivering a devastating insult disguised as a compliment. From the moment I married Mark 5 years ago, Eleanor had made it clear, in a million subtle and not-so-subtle ways, that she didn't think I was good enough for her son, for their family. My background wasn't quite prestigious enough. My job, I'm a teacher, wasn't impressive enough. My independent streak was seen as defiance. She was controlling, possessive of Mark, and saw me as an interloper, someone who had taken her son away. Robert, my father-in-law, was a quieter man, seemingly kind, often appearing caught between his wife's sharp disapproval and a genuine desire for peace. He rarely challenged Eleanor, content to observe from the sidelines. Mark was unfortunately similar. He loved me, but he had spent his whole life trying to appease his mother, often shrinking from direct confrontation, leaving me to navigate her passive aggression and open hostility alone. Tonight felt particularly fraught. Eleanor had been making pointed remarks about my appearance, my job, even the way I was holding my fork. I tried to smile it off, to rely on Mark's quiet support, to just get through the evening. The main course was being served. Robert was talking to his brother about golf. Mark was discussing something with his aunt. Eleanor was coordinating with the server, directing where plates should be placed. My water glass was nearly empty. Eleanor, overseeing the table, picked up the water carafe. She came around the table, pouring water for everyone. She got to me. As she tilted the carafe towards my glass, I happened to glance up, catching her reflection in a large decorative mirror on the wall behind her. And I saw it. Her movements were quick, practiced. As she poured, her other hand, the one holding the carafe's handle, moved slightly. Her fingers fumbled with something small she had palmed. Something small and white. In the reflection, for just a split second, I saw her hand hovering over my glass, her fingers releasing the small object. It dropped into the water. She finished pouring, placed the carafe back down, and moved on, her face completely neutral, turning to speak to Mark. My heart leaped into my throat. I froze, my eyes fixed on my water glass. The ice cube shifted, and then I saw it. A tiny white object, like a small pill or a compacted piece of powder, swirling near the bottom, already starting to dissolve, leaving a faint, cloudy trail in the otherwise clear water. She had done it. My mother-in-law had just secretly put something into my drink. A wave of pure, unadulterated horror washed over me. My mind reeled. What was it? A sleeping pill? Something to make me sick? Something worse? Poison? The thought was so monstrous, so unbelievable. Yet the image in the mirror, the object in my glass, was terrifyingly real. My hands started to tremble. I felt dizzy. I was in their house, surrounded by people, but utterly isolated in this horrifying discovery. My mother-in-law was trying to harm me, actively trying to hurt me. Panic, sharp and cold, seized me. What do? Do I call her out? Right here, in front of everyone? Accuse the esteemed Eleanor Vance of poisoning her daughter-in-law? It would be my word against hers. She would deny it, call me crazy, hysterical. Mark would be caught in the middle, devastated. The scandal would be immense, and she would likely get away with it. Do I just not drink it? Try to subtly pour it out? But then she'll know I saw. She'll know I suspect her. and who knows what she'll do next. The thought of her knowing I was onto her, of her escalating her efforts, it was terrifying. My eyes darted around the table, searching for an option, a way out, a way to get proof, a way to protect myself. Mark was still talking to his aunt, oblivious. Robert, my father-in-law, was seated across from me, engaged in conversation with his brother. His water glass was on the table, half full. His glass. It looked exactly like mine. Same design, same size, filled with water and ice. An idea, reckless, terrifying, and born purely of desperate instinct, flashed into my mind. I couldn't drink the water. I had to know what it was, and I had to somehow make her face the consequences, make her plan backfire, without openly accusing her and causing a scene I couldn't control. It was a long shot, a gamble. But in that split second of pure terror and adrenaline, it felt like the only option that wasn't either passive victimhood or self-destructive confrontation. Robert was leaning forward, talking to his brother, his attention completely elsewhere. Eleanor had moved down the table. Mark was looking the other way. The aunts and uncles were engaged in their own conversations. Now it had to be now. My heart was pounding like a drum against my ribs. My hands shook, but I willed them steady. I subtly reached for my glass with my right hand, as if just taking a sip. With my left hand, I reached towards Robert's glass, trying to make it look casual, like I was adjusting something on the table. In one fluid, terrifyingly quick motion, barely a second long, I swapped the glasses. My glass, the one with the dissolving mystery, went into the spot where Robert's had been. His glass, the clean one, was now in front of me. It was clumsy, nerve-wracking, but in the general movement and distraction of the dinner table, I prayed no one saw. I sat back, my heart hammering against my ribs, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I had done it. I had potentially just put something dangerous, something intended for me, into the hands of my father-in-law. The terror was immense, but I had acted. I had survived the immediate threat. And now, the game had changed. The poisoned chalice, intended for me, was now sitting in front of Robert. They thought they were planning to harm me. They thought they were in control. They didn't know I had just turned their malicious plan into a ticking time bomb sitting right under their noses, a time bomb that was now threatening one of their own. My survival instinct had just put a powerful unknown element into play. And now, we would see who drank what, and what would happen next. The rest of the dinner was an agonizing tightrope walk. Every time Robert reached for his glass, my original glass, my breath hitched. I watched him like a hawk, trying to read his expression, looking for any sign that he saw something in the water, any flicker of recognition, any physical reaction. Eleanor, seeming outwardly relaxed, occasionally glanced down the table, her eyes sweeping over the glasses, over Robert, then over me. Was she checking if I had drunk it? Was she looking for signs of the substance taking effect? The tension was unbearable. I picked up Robert's original glass a few times, pretending to sip, terrified she might notice I wasn't drinking from the correct glass, or, worse, notice something about the water itself if I looked too closely. My marriage to Mark was built on genuine love, but it existed within the complicated and often hostile ecosystem of his family. The Vances were old money, their wealth and social standing stretching back generations. Mark's father, Robert, was the head of the family, a man of quiet authority, seemingly kind but often passive in the face of Eleanor's dominance. Eleanor was the true matriarch, controlling, manipulative, obsessed with appearances and maintaining the family status. From the start, she saw me as a threat to her control over Mark, and as someone who didn't measure up to the Vance standard of a suitable wife. I wasn't from the right kind of family, didn't have the right kind of job, didn't move in the right social circles. Her hostility was palpable, cutting remarks about my clothes, my apartment, my career, my family. She constantly undermined me, tried to exclude me from family decisions, and subtly tried to convince Mark that he had made a mistake marrying me. Robert usually stayed out of it, offering awkward smiles or changing the subject. Mark, trapped between his love for me and a lifetime of trying to please his demanding mother, often retreated, leaving me to face Eleanor's barbs alone. Eleanor's motives for hating me seemed primarily rooted in her possessiveness of Mark and her obsession with family status. She saw me as a lower-class outsider who had taken her son and didn't contribute to the family's prestige. But her actions tonight suggested something far more extreme than simple dislike or snobbery. This was malicious, dangerous. As I watched Robert and endured the strained dinner, my mind raced, trying to understand what Eleanor had put in my glass and why. I couldn't check the glass discreetly without risking being seen. But as the dinner progressed, and Robert took a few sips from the glass, I started watching him even more closely, looking for any subtle changes in his behavior, any signs that he had ingested something unusual. It wasn't an immediate dramatic collapse, as I might have feared from poison. Instead, the effects, as they began to appear, were more insidious, more subtle, but terrifyingly real. Robert became different. His usual quiet demeanor shifted. He became slightly agitated, his eyes more alert, darting around the room. He started talking more, interrupting others, his speech a little slurred or his thoughts less coherent than usual. He seemed disinhibited, saying things he normally wouldn't. His face, initially calm, started showing signs of confusion, then perhaps mild paranoia or unease. This wasn't a common sedative. This was something affecting his mind, his behavior. My horror intensified as I recognized the implications of these symptoms. This wasn't meant to kill me or make me sick in a simple way. This was meant to make me act erratically, perhaps say things I shouldn't, appear confused, emotional, or unstable in front of the family and guests. Eleanor wanted to discredit me, to make me seem mentally unbalanced, unpredictable, perhaps even dangerous. She wanted to give Mark and the family a clear, undeniable reason to cut ties with me, a reason rooted in my perceived psychological state, not just her dislike. This was a calculated attempt to destroy my reputation and my relationship with Mark, not just by poisoning me physically, but by poisoning their perception of my mind. The sheer malice of this motive was terrifying. I continued my agonizing observation of Robert. As the drug took further effect, his unusual behavior became more pronounced, harder for even the less observant guests to ignore. He started talking louder, making inappropriate jokes, interrupting Eleanor with rambling off-topic comments. Eleanor's outward composure began to crack. I saw her watching Robert, her eyes wide with a dawning horror, whispering urgently to him, trying to calm him down, trying to steer the conversation away from his erratic contributions. She hadn't expected this. She had expected me to be the one acting strangely, having a breakdown, perhaps being escorted out of the party looking disoriented and unstable. Seeing her husband exhibit the symptoms intended for me filled her with visible panic. Her face, moments before composed, was now a mask of desperate anxiety. Mark, seated beside me, also noticed his father's strange behavior. He looked concerned, then confused, glancing from his father to his mother, sensing something was seriously wrong, but not understanding what. He looked at me, seeing my strained face, perhaps thinking I was upset by the tension. I couldn't tell him anything. Not yet. Every sip Robert took, every erratic word he uttered, was a punch to my gut. I was terrified I had hurt him, that my desperate act of self-preservation had endangered an innocent man. But even stronger was the horror of confirming Eleanor's true nature. This wasn't just a difficult mother-in-law. This was a woman capable of cold, calculated cruelty, willing to drug me, to manipulate my mind, to destroy my reputation, just to get rid of me. The realization was sickening. The agonizing suspense of waiting for something to happen, of watching the drug take effect on Robert instead of me, was almost unbearable. The isolation of knowing this terrible secret, of being the only one in the room who understood the horrifying drama unfolding, was immense. But amidst the terror and the isolation, a strange sense of power began to rise. My desperate split-second decision had completely backfired on Eleanor. Her cruel plan was unfolding, but on the wrong person, exposing her intent in the most public and undeniable way possible, through the erratic behavior of her own husband. My hands were shaking under the table, hidden in my lap, but my resolve was solid like steel. I wouldn't let her cover this up. I wouldn't let her get away with attempting to poison me and destroy my life. I had been the intended victim, but now, with Robert's unwitting help, I had the leverage. I wouldn't use it for revenge in a simple way, but for truth, for justice, and for a final, irreversible shift in the power dynamics of this family. Every sip he took was a punch to my gut, I thought, watching Robert ramble incoherently. I was terrified I had hurt him, but I was more terrified of what Eleanor had intended for me. To make me look crazy, to ruin me. She didn't know I saw her. She didn't know I switched the glasses. Now her cruel plan was unfolding, but on the wrong person. And watching her face as she realized, that was a different kind of horror. My hands were shaking under the table, but my resolve was steel. I wouldn't let her get away with this, not ever. They thought it was just dinner, I thought, looking around the table at the stunned faces, at Eleanor's panic. It was a battlefield, and I had just fired the first silent shot, a shot that was about to expose all their carefully hidden cracks. Robert's erratic behavior reached a point where it could no longer be contained or ignored. He might stand up, say something completely inappropriate and revealing, or exhibit physical disorientation that makes it clear he's been drugged. Eleanor's attempts to quiet him, to usher him away from the table, only draw more attention. The other guests are visibly uncomfortable, whispering, some looking at Eleanor with concern, others with suspicion. Robert, under the full effect of the drug, doesn't just act strangely. He says something specific, something that reveals a crucial secret, a hidden truth about Eleanor, the family's past, that she desperately wants to keep buried. This truth is directly related to why Eleanor hates Clara or has been trying to get rid of her, exposing her true motive or her long-held deception. Robert might loudly say something about a hidden family debt Eleanor has been secretly accumulating or mismanaging for years, or mention a financial decision she made that caused significant problems, but she blamed someone else for it, perhaps subtly linking it back to Clara's family or background. Or he might reveal Eleanor's deep, irrational fear that Clara, or Clara's potential children, will somehow take away family assets, or influence that Eleanor believes are rightfully hers or her favored children's. Or he might talk about a past incident where Eleanor went to extreme lengths to manipulate a situation, revealing her pattern of manipulative behavior on a grander scale. Robert, disinhibited by the drug, starts talking loudly about Eleanor's secret account or the money from the mention a past family business deal or inheritance that was supposed to be shared, but Eleanor, she hid it or used it because she was afraid. Or Eleanor, she worries so much about the money, about you, Clara, taking what's hers. It's not fair. She did things. The specifics might be vague due to the drug, but the implication is clear. Eleanor has a financial secret or a deep unfounded fear related to money inheritance that drives her actions. The room erupts in shocked gasps and exclamations. All eyes snap to Eleanor. Her face is a mask of pure terror, her attempts to silence Robert becoming frantic. The pleasant dinner party has devolved into a public airing of a deep, dark family secret, triggered by Robert's drug-induced confession. Then, in the middle of this chaos, I speak. My voice is calm, clear, cutting through the panic and the revelations. Eleanor, I say, my voice steady, resonating with the power born of knowing the full, horrifying truth. Every eye turns to me. Robert is rambling incoherently. Eleanor is focused on him, panicked. The water Robert drank, The water that's making him act like this, that was my glass. Silence falls again, a stunned, different kind of silence. Confusion washes over some faces. I saw you, Eleanor, I state clearly, looking directly at my mother-in-law, who now freezes, her eyes fixed on me, panic turning to a dawning, terrifying realization. I saw you drop something into my water glass when you were pouring. I pause, letting that sink in. The accusation, the action, the connection. And I continue, my voice hardening, filled with a cold, righteous fury. I swapped the glasses. In that moment, when no one was looking, I couldn't drink it. I had to know. And I put your intended dose, your intended plan to make me act strangely, to discredit me, into your husband's glass instead. The truth slams into the room with the force of a physical blow. Eleanor's attempted poisoning, my counter move. Robert's subsequent drug-induced confession of Eleanor's own dark secret. It all converges into one horrifying, undeniable picture. Eleanor's cruelty, her hidden motives, her plan gone terribly wrong, all laid bare. Eleanor, who attempted to poison her daughter-in-law discreetly, is now publicly exposed not only for that heinous act, but also for her long-held secrets, which were inadvertently revealed by her own husband, drugged by the substance she intended for me. Clara, the intended victim, becomes the person who, through a desperate act of self-preservation, brought the truth and the perpetrator's hidden life into the light. Robert, unintentionally put in danger, becomes the unwitting key to exposing his wife's deception. The power dynamic is utterly reversed. Eleanor's control and respectable facade are destroyed. Clara's life and safety, threatened by a hidden act of malice, are now secured through the public exposure of that malice and its source. I stand there, no longer the timid daughter-in-law, no longer the potential victim. My voice is strong, my gaze unwavering as I face Eleanor and the stunned family. The fear from earlier is replaced by a fierce, protective resolve, and the relief of the truth finally being out. I don't need her love or acceptance anymore. I needed to survive, to expose her, to protect myself and ensure she could never do this to me or anyone else again. I speak about her cruelty, her judgment, the years of trying to tear me down, culminating in this dangerous act. I don't need her confession, her face, her panic, Robert's rambling words, my own testimony. It's all the proof I need. The emotional weight of the secret, the fear, the agony of watching Robert. It all culminates in this moment of undeniable truth and raw public justice. I have faced the darkness in my mother-in-law and emerged, not unscathed, but victorious. The party ended in utter pandemonium. An ambulance was called for Robert, whose condition stabilized quickly as the effects of the drug wore off, assuming it wasn't a long-acting or dangerous substance. The police were involved, though the initial investigation into Eleanor's attempt to drug me was complex and dependent on the type of substance and physical proof, the remaining water in the glass, potential analysis. The fallout within the family was immense and irreversible. Eleanor faced severe consequences, not just the legal ramifications of attempting to drug someone, which could range from minor charges to serious felonies depending on the substance and intent. The story might leave slightly ambiguous regarding the legal outcome for her specific action, but the complete destruction of her reputation and position within the family. Her husband, Robert, learned of her attempted poisoning and her hidden secrets in the most shocking way possible, likely shattering their marriage. Mark was devastated, caught between the woman he loved and the horrifying truth about his mother's actions and her hidden life. David and Sarah, if present, had to confront the reality of their mother's capacity for cruelty and deception. Clara emerged from the crisis physically unharmed, but emotionally scarred. She was vindicated. The truth of Eleanor's maliciousness and hidden secrets was exposed, clearing her name from any false narratives Eleanor might have tried to create. Her relationship with Mark likely faced significant challenges, but the truth about his mother's character forced him to confront his own enabling behavior and ultimately choose between his wife and his toxic mother. Assuming Mark ultimately stands by Clara, their bond would be forged in this fire. Clara's relationship with Robert might evolve. He was a passive figure, but he was also the unwitting victim who helped expose the truth. Clara is a survivor who faced a terrifying hidden threat within her own family and, through a desperate act of courage and quick thinking, exposed the darkness. She is no longer the timid daughter-in-law. She is a woman who stood up to evil and won. The experience taught Clara profound, difficult lessons about the hidden potential for cruelty in people, the corrosive nature of secrets, and the fact that appearances can be deceiving in the most dangerous ways. She learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. She learned that sometimes the only way to bring darkness to light is through a risky, desperate move, and that the truth, no matter how it comes out, ultimately has the power to dismantle lies and expose those who hide them. Looking back, the moment Eleanor dropped that tiny white object into my glass, and the split second I decided to swap it with Robert's, were the moments that changed everything. It was a gamble with terrifying stakes, but it saved me and exposed the truth. Considering the extreme danger Eleanor posed, her calculated attempt to drug and discredit Clara, and the irreversible consequences she faced due to Clara's quick thinking. Do you think Clara's decision to swap the glasses, potentially endangering Robert, was a justified and necessary act of self-preservation in an immediate, life-threatening situation? Or was it an overly reckless action that risked harming an innocent person? Yes, it was justified. In that split second, facing unknown danger from a malicious person, it was a necessary act of self-preservation. B. No, it was overly reckless. While understandable in panic, it risked harming an innocent person. What do you think?